welcome back. I'm so happy to be back. I apologize for not being able to have these videos according to our timetable. I've been so wrapped up with other church engagements as well as my work engagement for my students as a bilingual school counselor and as an active church member and volunteer in my church. We did amazing things. Um, Today is March 20, but I'll be able to have these three video segments of the next three chapter series of the first book of Samuel. So we've reached the first book of Samuel. We finished Ruth, and we're going to start the first book of Samuel. And for Thursday's reading, March 18th, it was the first book of Samuel, chapters 1, 2, and 3, which is what I'm going to do in this video. So thank you guys for your patience and your support. I'm so glad you can join us this time. So in the first book of Samuel, chapter 1, it talks about Elkanah and his wives. Wives, plural. You already know what I'm thinking. Like, why he has two wives. Anyways, Elkanah has two wives. We don't know the reasons. The Bible doesn't say. It's probably not that important. I will find out in heaven one day, hopefully. And both the first wife is Peninnah and the second is Hannah. But he loved Hannah. Like, his true love was Hannah. Peninnah, I guess he had that respect and honor for her as a wife and as the mother of his children. But he loved Hannah. He had like that special spot for her. So Peninnah was able to have children. The one that Elkanah didn't have that special love for her or favored her. But Hannah, who he really loved, didn't have children. And that made her very sad because she wanted children. And Elkanah's like, aren't I enough? Like, aren't I like a symbol like of 10 sons for you? But Hannah wanted to be a mom. So they always go to the city of Shiloh, and the city of Shiloh became a blessed city, and we read that in the last verses in Ruth chapter 4, where Shiloh would be a blessed city because that's where the priests would be and the tabernacle. So, and the ark, God's ark and his covenant was there. So Shiloh was a very blessed city, and a lot of people would go to Shiloh. And Elkanah and his family, his two wives and Peninnah's sons, they would go every year to offer sacrifice. And Peninnah was like Hannah's enemy because Peninnah would make fun of her. It says it in verse, year after year. So it happened year after year whenever she went up the house of the Lord, Peninnah provoked her, meaning got her angry or upset. So she wept and she could not eat. Then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you cry and why you do not eat? Why are you so sad and discontent? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? And again, I'm always reading from the Amplified version, but you guys could feel free to read the version that works for you. So Hannah got up after eating and drinking Shiloh, and she went to the tabernacle, to the temple. So she was so distressed. And the Amplified Bible commentary says she was bitter of her soul. So wow, she was very, very sad. And she prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish. Verse 10. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord of hosts, if you would indeed look on this affliction or suffering of your maidservant, and remember, and not forget your maidservant or me, but will give your maidservant me, Hannah, a son, then I'll give him to the Lord all of his days of his life. And a razor shall never touch his head. Or a shearing knife, it may say in some versions, but it's to shave your head off. This was a requirement of a Nazirite vow, which would apply to Samuel all his life, which reminds me of the Nazirite oath that God bestows on Samuel on Samson, when he was even before in his mom's womb. So it's a special covenant. She says, just give me my son now. He's yours. Like, everything I have is yours. So this son will be specially dedicated for God's service. So as she was praying, I don't know if you guys had prayed the way like this, sometimes like silent, like, so she was murmuring, but you really can't hear the murmur or the grunts or the noise. So Eli's coming out of the temple and he sees this lady like praying, Hannah, and he's like, is she drunk? Because she's like not talking. She has her eyes closed. She looks like she's praying, but nothing's coming out. Is she a little crazy? Is she drinking? So he asks her, are you intoxicated? Are you drinking? You need to stop. And she's like, no, I am just so afflicted with my soul. I'm so upset. I made a petition to God, and I'm just so wounded in my spirit. It says in verse 15, I have a despairing spirit. So Eli tells her, go in peace, verse 17. And may God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked for him. And that soothes Hannah, like, wow, thank you. Let your maidservant find grace and favor in your sight. So she went her way, and she was no longer sad. She was calm. And then the wonderful son of Hannah is born, Samuel. So when they go home, Elkanah and Hannah knew each other. We know what that means. They had sexual relations. And the Lord blessed her womb and was able to grant her the son. And she named him Samuel, because it says, because I've asked for him from the Lord. Verse 20. Oh, and also the Amplified Bible Commentary says the name possibly means the name, or Yahweh, Lord is God, or his name is God, but the etymology is uncertain. Okay. I like the first where it says, because I've asked for him. I think that's more relevant for her. So then they go back to Shiloh, and then Elkanah is like, okay, we're going back to Shiloh. We're going to do our yearly sacrifice there. And she said, no, I need to wean off Samuel first, and then I'm going to dedicate him to his service. And then Elkanah is like, okay, that's fine. You could stay home and take care of our son and do what you're saying. Do what is good. And also remember, it is God's will. So he goes with his other wife and the sons, and she stays home. And then after the time happens, after she weans him, then she goes to Shiloh that time with Elkanah, probably the following year. And then she presents him to Eli, like, hey, this was the baby that I was asking for. That was my petition. Because Hannah, when Hannah and Eli had that encounter, she never tells Eli what the petition is, and it's for baby Samuel. And then she tells Eli, I want you to start preparing yourself, because he's going to be with you and serving God with you. And then, she tells him that, and then they were worshiping God all there together. And I just see some really good footnotes from Amplify that I want to just point out. From 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 1, it says, it is sometimes claimed that Samuel was from the tribe of Ephraim rather than the tribe of Levi. Oh, and remember, the Levites are the holy priests. And so was not eligible to serve as a priest. He was an Ephraimite only in the sense that his family lived in the tribal area of Ephraim. So it's kind of like, if I live in Colombia, you're going to assume I'm Colombian. His genealogy is given in 1 Chronicles 6:22-28. At least two other men in the passage are named Elkanah. Samuel's father, Elkanah, is the man mentioned in 1 Chronicles 6:27. Now we know for the future when we read 1 Chronicles. The men mentioned in 1 Chronicles 6:23-24 and 26 are several generations removed from Samuel. Alright, so it's a theory. But regardless, because of the vow Hannah made, he was eligible to become a holy priest. And I'm sure God was very happy that Hannah made that vow and she completed it. Now, chapter 2 is really nice. From verses 1 to verses 10, I highly recommend you guys to read it. I'll just read one stanza of this beautiful song, praise poem that Hannah dedicates to God. I love the first part says, my heart rejoices and triumphs in the Lord. My horn or strength is lifted up in the Lord. My mouth has opened wide to speak boldly against my enemies, because I rejoiced in your salvation. Wow. And she suffered, and for her to be able to rejoice, and after that beautiful blessing, like, she felt that peace. Even before Samuel was born and before she was pregnant, she left that, having that conversation with Eli, and after praying to God, she felt peace. That's the power of prayer. We feel peace every time. I feel it every time I pray. So in that time when she gives when they go back to Shiloh, she leaves the child Samuel. He's probably like maybe 3 years old, and now Eli raises him and trains him to be a priest. So now chapter 2, now verses 12 to 36. That's the last verse. It gets a bit sad. And why I say sad, so Eli has two sons who are also priests, right? Because the Levites, generation forever, they're going to be holy priests. Their names are Hophni and Phinehas. The verse 12 says they were worthless or dishonorable, unprincipled men. And the Amplified Bible commentary says sons of Belial, I think is Baal, which we know is like the pagan god, or in other words, it's just sin. They were very sinful. And the son of Belial is what I read in my King James Version, 1960. And they would mess around with the sacrifices. So it says, when any man was offering, verse 13, by the way, a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come while the meat was boiling with a 3-pronged meat fork in his hand. Then he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or whatever. Everything that the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. This is what they did in Shiloh to all the sacrifices of the Israelites who came there. Also, before they burn from the offering of the fat, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who was sacrificing, give the priest meat to roast, since he will not accept boiled meat from you, only raw. If the man said to him, certain they are to burn the fat first, and then you may take as much as you want, then the priest's servant would say, no, you shall give it to me now, or I will take it by force. Like, how can you say that as a priest, like, I'll take it by force? Like, that's just horrible. So the sin of having feasts were very great. But it gets worse. It's not just that. It's not just gluttony. And oh yeah. So sorry, I don't want to skip anything. Okay, so after that little mention of that sin, the Bible in verses 18 to 21 talks about how Elkanah and Hannah are getting ready to go, and then Eli blesses them. May God give you children with Hannah's in replacing Samuel, because he's gonna be mine and God's, for it to be a holy priest. So, and they did. She gave birth to 3 more sons and 2 daughters. So that was very nice. God is merciful. God is loving. So Eli starts to rebuke his sons, but he doesn't discipline them or correct them. He just rebukes them, like, scold, like, hey, like, just a little pat, and that's not enough. These are adults. He found out that his sons were having sex with the women who were going to the tabernacle and bring their sacrifices. So I'm thinking, were they raping them? I feel like they were raping, or I think it was rape because there's a manipulation, and because they have an authority. So for me, that's just, sexual assault and rape. Not sure if it was consensual, but that was an abuse of power. That's all I have to say. So God then gives a vision to Samuel. He talks to Samuel for the first time. It says Samuel didn't recognize God, so he kept going to Eli 3 times. Eli, why are you waking me up? You keep calling me. And then Eli on the 3rd time figured, oh, is God calling you? So God basically tells Samuel, I'm going to promise Eli all the punishment and consequences that I told him, because he has not corrected his son. Like, that small rebuke is not a correction. So, and then Eli the next day asks Samuel, what did God tell you? Do not hide it. He's like, don't hide me anything, or whatever God told you he was going to do, may it be double for you. And then, Samuel's a child. He's like, okay. And he tells him everything. He didn't hold back any word. And from then on, it says in the Bible that Samuel always said word by word what God told him. He would never distort it, corrupt it, add, or take away. So good for you, Samuel. And yeah, he became a very famous priest and prophet in the land of Israel. So we're going to continue with the next video segment. Chapters, I believe it's chapters 4 to 7. So I'll see you in the next video segment. Take care, everybody.